Forum will be question and answer with timed responses. Under this format, questions will be asked by the moderator. Questions have been selected in advance, and the candidate's response is timed for 30 to 45 seconds and is not to exceed 1 minute. There will be time allotted at the end of the night, 15 minutes, for questions from the audience here tonight. This will give anyone in attendance the opportunity to ask a question of the candidates. And again, it's the same time for responses, 30 to 45 seconds, not exceeding a minute. We are hoping to be done in less than 2 hours this evening. And I ask all candidates to please respond only to the questions asked by the moderator. There are 3 different types of questions I'll be asking tonight. Some questions will be for all candidates. Some questions will be for only candidates running for selectmen. And some questions will be only for candidates running for the planning board. I would request that those in the audience please silence their phones. I would also request that you do not clap for any answers you find agreeable. Very happy to have you smile at the candidates or wink at them, but please not too much noise in the audience until the questions at the end. And I would just like to take opportunity of this forum to quickly announce, again, I'm here from State Senator Ann Gobi's office. I'm her district director, and I hold office hours in the town of Warren every month, as I do in all of our towns. Our next hours are scheduled for Wednesday, May 18th, 11 o'clock to noon, and you can always reach our office at 617-722-1540, or look at my office hours schedule at senatorangobi.com. So, with that, let me introduce our candidates. We have 4 candidates running for 2 positions. Running for selectman, we have Mr. Peter Krawczyk. Running for selectman, we have Mr. Marc Richard. Running for selectman, we have Mr. J Corriveau. And also running for planning board, Mr. J Corriveau.
3-year planning.
Yes, and running for planning board, we have Derick R Veliz. So I will ask our first question, and we will proceed in that same order. This question is for all candidates. I'm wondering, how long have you lived in the town of Warren, and can you speak a little about your attendance at town meetings and your contribution to the community? And before you start, I'll just say I have a timer here. When you're at about 45 seconds, I'll give you a little wrap it up symbol, and when you are at a minute, I will speak over you a little bit. I will say thank you, moving on. I'm hoping that we won't have
Are we in a hurry to go home? Is that the problem?
No, not quite, but we are trying to make sure that all candidates have the opportunity to have an equal amount of speaking time. So, Mr. Krawczyk, again, the question is, how long have you lived in Warren, and can you speak about your attendance at town meetings and your contribution to the community?
I've lived in Warren for my whole life, 56 years. I've been attending town meetings since I was old enough to vote. I've always taken Warren to heart. I worked on the cemetery. I've cleaned parts of the cemetery off at St. Paul's for the church. My uncle owned a lawn mowing business. I took care of the parks for 5 years in this town. I've been serving on the planning board for the last 8 years. I serve as the regional delegate at CMRPC in Worcester. I've served on the Regional Casino Task Force. I serve on several committees for CMRPC. One of them is including a budget committee, physical development. It's been important to have a spokesman at CMRPC, because that's where the money comes from.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Krawczyk. Mr. Richard, same question. How long have you lived in Warren, and can you speak of your attendance at town meetings and contribution to the community?
Yes, sir. I've been in Warren now for 31 years. I was born and raised in Southbridge. I have raised 2 sons, built 2 homes, and live in a 3rd home now that my eldest son bought in West Warren. I served 6 years on the Board of Selectmen, and I think I have a documented track record of being able to get things done on time, on budget. I served on the planning board for 11 years, and I'm currently retired. I work at the service station down in the center of town, part-time, and I think I have the time, the ambition, and most of all the experience to continue doing the job for the town of Warren.
Thank you very much. Mr. Corriveau.
Okay, the reason I'm doing this now is because I want to set the tone for the debate, and I also want you to understand what my selectmen's meetings would look like. First of all, I've been in town 30 years. First of all, I want to thank my opponents for running and wanting to serve Warren. Whether you like or dislike, you need to respect the process. All residents of Warren need to vote on election day and also attend the town meeting to vote down useless spending. What I love most about Warren is despite all the greed and corruption that has been under for so long, it still shows signs of life. Lots of good, decent, kind people have had to suffer for the sins of a few. I am fighting for these good and decent, kind people. It would take me a week to explain all the reasons why Warren is so abused, run down, why we have a 20% tax rate, why past money and make $10 million over the last 2 years has been wasted, stolen, misused, etc. We need to stop the debt spiral of the few people who are responsible for holding this town hostage from its potential. I want the good people of this town to know that I'm fighting for you. I want the bad people to be unnoticed, that I will not stop fighting until my last breath. I want no more sweeping stuff under the rugs. I want people held accountable, and I want transparency.
Thank you.
With all due respect to my opponents, I am the only candidate who has been falsely charged and persecuted taking a stand against greed and corruption in this town. I consider it my badge of honor, and I will keep taking hits for this beautiful little town. I will not just be a rubber stamp. I know in my heart and soul that my fight for this town is a noble one and needs to be fought. Please let me be of service to Warren by securing your vote for selectmen 3-year planning. I am the only candidate with enough strength to fix this beautiful little town.
Thank you, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Veliz.
No, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. We moved 6 years ago with my lovely wife and 2 kids. I've been voting into meetings in the last 3 years. The more that we merge into the town, the more we've been interested in helping. And as our kids go to the school, we've been trying to participate more and try to give something back to the town. As you know, all our lives is our kids, so they're at school 5 and 9 years old, so we've been helping the school as much as we can. I was part of the team that put together the playground, and we got it up finally, and it's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Veliz. The next question is for only the 3 candidates for selectmen. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, what would you do to encourage new businesses in town, whether those businesses are current businesses that are expanding or new businesses that are relocating into Warren? Mr. Krawczyk.
I've already put something in motion. In 1988, Warren had a charter commission that failed. I believe a lot of it was to do with a lack of advertisement, understanding it. And I put an article on to go forward to create a town administrator position. I feel we need someone that's capable of going out and looking for businesses. And for years, it has not been going on. We hired a town planner to do this. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but it's just not working. It hasn't. We haven't gone anywhere. So I feel that we should go in another direction, and I think a town administrator would be a good way to go.
Thank you. Mr. Richard. The question again is, as a new member of the Board of Selectmen, what would you do to encourage new businesses in town?
Well, one of the problems I think we have is Warren has to be known for more than cell towers, solar farms, and the highest tax rate almost in the state. The only way you're gonna get new business is to make Warren a habitable place to do business. You have to have community spirit, you have to have involvement, and unless we do something about the tax rate, nobody is gonna come here and everybody is gonna continue to leave. It's not a very simple answer to sit there and do the tax rate, but we have to acknowledge the fact that everybody in town cannot have everything they need. There has to be more people in town accountable, and somebody has to come up once in a while and tell somebody, no, you cannot have that.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Corriveau.
Well, the reason I'm running for planning board and selectmen is live within our our means, okay, we need to procure grants, federal grants, somehow we need to, the town's got a lot of serious issues and it's very complicated, but I have an idea that we have 40 acres on the top of Marks Mountain, which is our town's property basically, because it's never been forfeited through any, it's just sitting there, nobody's been paying taxes on it. So if we could take that piece of land, we got another piece that goes right up into it on Crouch Road, and put 40 acres worth of solar panels. I don't care. Get the town some revenue somehow with that piece of land. Use it as a park. Do something with it. That's just one thing. I got a lot of things. It's a very complicated issue, and I'm sure my minute's up now.
Thank you, Mr. Corriveau. This next question is also for the candidates running for Board of Selectmen. I'll state just as a quick note that we have the Selectmen candidate questions at the beginning and the Planning Board questions will be toward the end. For this question, why don't we switch up the order? We'll have Mr. Corriveau go first, and we'll come back this way with the questions. This question, discuss what action, if any, should be taken in regard to the town's libraries. There have been proposals for many years to merge the two libraries into a single entity, and what is your position and opinions on the subject?
Okay, this is an easy one, because I answered this 2 years ago when I ran. And you might as well vote for me now and elect me, because I'm gonna keep running every year till I get elected, you know, I'm gonna pull a Delancey, and I'm gonna get, unopposed. But anyways, if we stop wasting money on corruption in this town, we could have the two libraries, no problem, okay? That's my answer. Both libraries, one on that end, one on that end. Libraries shouldn't be bottom of the list, of priorities in the town.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Richard, same question.
Well, one, I gracefully disagree that corruption is a pretty strong word, but I think you're talking two different articles here. Stopping corruption or waste or whatever you want to word it as is not going to do a thing for libraries. The libraries have to be tackled head on. And unfortunately, the only time we seem to get into the library discussion is every year at this time when we go to a town meeting when both libraries are seeking funding. My only concern over the years is, am I a strong library supporter? Yes, I am. I think not everybody has computers, not everybody has access that a lot of people have, that the public library still is a valuable asset to every community. But currently, we have two buildings and we pay rent in those buildings and we don't own. I think besides having a 5-minute discussion before town meeting and trying to wrangle it out on the town floor meeting in a 3-hour period, that the discussion has to be well thought up long before that to finally come to the decision, either build a building, but to pay rent in a building we don't own, and to do something. There's got to be more of a solution.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
I'm a firm believer in libraries. I think they should be there. Warren does have a demographic problem where West Warren is quite a distance from Warren. If you look at our combined budgets, they're equal to most towns' single budgets. I don't think the library is an issue at all. Last year, we spent hundreds of thousands at town meeting with no answer where we were looking for the money, if we could have found alternate ways to pay for things. We just spent it. So I don't think there's an issue with the budget at all with the library. And I think the libraries need to work out their differences between, to find one manageable way to work amongst themselves, but they're private, that's absolutely sure, and we're not really in the process for doing that. The selectmen should work with them, but they have to work it out themselves.
All right, thank you very much. This next question, we will go in the same order we just did. Mr. Corriveau first. The Quabog Regional School District budget calls for a contribution by the town over its mandated assessment. What is your position on the current request, and how would you suggest addressing this moving forward? Additionally, what is your opinion regarding the school department's budget request for fiscal year 17? And this is a question, for the candidates for selectmen. Quabog Regional School District budget, Mr. Corriveau.
Well, I wish we could get everybody in this town what they want, okay? But this town has a lot of taxpayers at the end of their ropes. In case you people don't know it, the town's broke before we even get out of bed in the morning, okay? So with that being said, I wish everybody could have everything, but I will also say that money will never, ever, ever fix stupid. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Richard, same question, the Quabog Regional School District budget.
Well, I don't think myself or any of the two candidates on either side have a viable solution. It's a problem that plagues every small and large town in this state. And, be quite honest with you, I don't have a quick answer. I support a strong school. A strong school equals a strong community. A strong community equals business. But one of my biggest concerns is that, that the bulk of the budget doesn't seem to go to the students, it goes to administration. And I think it's ironic that we have this discussion every year, and a budget's a budget. Everybody has to live within a budget. And the fact that bothers me is we spend a lot of money educating our students in Warren, but we offer them absolutely nothing to keep them here once we educate them. We educate them and they move because there is nothing to keep them in this town.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
Recently, I attended several of the meetings for subcommittee on budget at the high school. I didn't see either one of these candidates there. In the past, I served in a small tax group called Warren Taxpayers Association. For a number of years, we sat the subcommittee on budget and went through line-by-line items on the school budget, and we could whittle the budget down by doing this. I don't know who's doing it now, haven't done it. I haven't attended the meetings for years. But I truly believe that you need to take part with the school committee members that do set up this budget. And if you're not going to those meetings and setting up the budget with them, they're gonna do what they feel is best. And the last couple of meetings I went to with the school, they're doing the best job they can with the numbers they have to work with. And they're doing it with what they can for the children. So I'm in favor of the school budget the way it is right now.
Could I just add a comment, Tyler?
Sure.
Okay, I agree with Peter, and here's the thing. You have a few members on the school board, I guess they elect the principals and blah, 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 but we had somebody run unopposed this year who's of one mind. If we could get people in the town to run and get on that board, I ran for planning board and selectmen. I wanted to run for school board, but I can't, but that's the only way you're gonna solve problems in this town, is to get involved at this point to try to change it.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to second comments? All right, great. This next question is again for the candidates for selectmen. We'll reverse the order again. Mr. Krawczyk, I'll have you go first. What is your position regarding the town hall? Should we preserve the town hall, and if so, how should it be preserved?
Again, I'm gonna fall back on the town administrator's position. I believe there's millions of dollars worth of grants out there that are available for Warren with no one to go after them to preserve this building. It definitely should be preserved because it's a landmark in our town. Whether the police stations should stay in there, that's debatable. But the building itself, I think it's a landmark in Warren, and it should be preserved. It has a beautiful upstairs. They finished fixing it up. I think that we have possibilities here. But definitely, it's a matter, someone's gonna go look for money for this, to do these repairs. Millions of dollars worth of repairs need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Richard.
Well, again, I take the position, Peter does, that I just don't think you can sit there and condemn the building like it was. That was a little bit of fast tracking right there. But it's not up to the board, 3 individuals, to decide what happens with the building that's been in this town for 100 years. There's 3,112 voters in this town. And I think one of the discussions is we end up having surveys and all these people about what we want to do, but we never go forward and do them. Now, the town is at a crossroads. You have a choice. You can spend $500,000 fixing it up, or you can spend $500,000 tearing it down. Why and good Lord's name would we sit there and tear down a building in the middle of town? It has to be either refurbished and have something done in there. Right now, it houses a police station. It's been a police station for 40 years.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau.
Okay, I did a recall petition on the selectmen 2 years ago, and one reason I cited was because of the deplorable conditions of the town hall. Taxpayer money was diverted from its purpose to fix up the town hall, and the town hall has never been kept up. So at the very least, taxpayers, we have been ripped off. If I am elected as a selectman, I promise the town hall will be resurrected and shined up like the precious jewel that it is. I've been a licensed contractor for 30 years, plus I worked 10 years before that for other contractors. That's 40 years I worked in construction. So when people who have no experience tell me the reasons and obstacles why we can't fix up the town hall, I wish I could be elected selectman and planning board so I would get this town hall so we can all enjoy it. I would like to see the town hall shined up and its mold problems, et cetera, be solved. It's not as difficult as everybody thinks. I'd like to have the town offices moved there, and the Shepherd building could be for the police.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. This next question is for all of our candidates. I'm going to start again with Mr. Krawczyk. It's a bit of a general question. Would you please speak to a single issue facing the town and how you feel it should be addressed moving forward, whether the issue is related to the position you seek or not? And I will remind you each that you do have 1 minute each for this question. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think one of the issues I've had in the past, which I brought up at Board of Health meetings, we have a transfer station, but 2/3 of our town currently has curbside pickup. When they voted to put a transfer station in, it was nice for the people that use it, but the other 2/3 of the people were left out, basically finding someone to haul their own trash. And I really feel that after calling some of the biggest trash haulers for Warren, they've all told me we could reduce our bills to the general public by 30% if we did a town-wide bid for trash curbside pickup. And I've gone to one of our former selectmen and gave him phone numbers and said, all you have to do is call them, come in, and they'll explain just what I'm telling you. And nothing's been done about it. And I feel that it should be on a ballot, not at town meeting, to decide what 2/3 of the town is paying for. And I think that's where we should be looking at, one of the things to improve Warren.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard.
Where do you start? There are issues that involve every department. You know, school issue is important. Police department issues are important. I think it's very, very hard for me to sit there and pick out one. But if I had to, I don't think you're gonna do anything until you get the tax rate down. Plain and simple. You can't attract new business. You can't get a balanced budget. You can't move forward if everybody doesn't get in line and sit there and bite the bullet once in a while and act as a unit as opposed to, I got what I want, so I don't worry about anybody else. The tax rate is just absolutely killing us now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau, any issue in town?
Could you repeat the whole question for me?
Please speak to a single issue facing the town and how you feel it should be addressed moving forward, whether the issue is related to the positions you seek or not.
Well, there's so many issues, and I want to listen to, obviously, the tax rate and the financial problem, that's the biggest issue. And I agree with what both these people said, and it's kind of, there's so many problems, we have to just take this is like the low on the totem pole, okay? So we have, to get the tax rate down, we have to get new business in, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Veliz.
Regardless of all the problems that we may have or we may encounter, I think one of the issues that I find is communications, trying to spread the word, telling all the town what's going on, what happens, how we can fix it, what's the problem. I think it's I don't know, probably it's my nature, or it's probably because when we got here, we found ourselves without knowing a lot of the stuff. So I think one of the issues that I would like to address is communications and, addressing each of the problems regardless of the problem.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Veliz. This is a question for the three candidates for Board of Selectmen. I'm going to start with Mr. Krawczyk on this end. There has been talk about the town moving forward with a town administrator. What is your opinion on having a town administrator, and how would you fund such a position if you're in favor of it?
I'm in favor of it, absolutely. I feel that currently our town planner position, it worked for a number of years. We were preparing for a casino going in Parma, and we really needed someone to be on board for that position. And now, that position is no longer really, we've ironed out some of our zoning bylaws on the planning board and a few other things in town, and I think going forward, we need someone to start looking for grants to support some of the buildings in town and some of the projects that we're doing. And after talking to a former person that worked for our town, as a town administrator slash, I'd say, secretary for the selectmen, he told me that projects like our lighting project that we just did for the streets, he did the same project in his town, it didn't cost him anything. He found funding from the state that paid for it. So I feel that we need to look more into that avenue of offsetting costs by looking for alternative ways to pay for it, and part-time selectmen don't have that time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krawczyk. Mr. Richard?
Repeat the
Yes,
question, please.
certainly. There has been talk about the town moving forward with a town administrator. What is your opinion of this, and if you were in favor, how would you fund such a position?
Well, I think that question raises more questions than answers that I have. A town administrator in what authority? Is it the do-all, and he is the one person that makes all the decisions for the town?
I have no.
I don't know what the job description of a town administrator is. What does a town administrator cost? Are we looking at, you're not gonna get somebody in here for $20,000, we're looking at another employee at $75,000 a year? And if that's the case, what happens to the current form of government? Is the selectman involved at all, or is it part-time where they're an advisory? Like I think Ware has that type of sort of split administration, but, until somebody can sit there and say, this is what he's gonna do, this is what his responsibilities are gonna do, this is what his costs are gonna be, this is what, there's more questions than answers. I don't think we're gonna solve anything by hiring somebody else.
All right, thank you, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau?
Peter, did you put this article in there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, see, I just figured that out, but anyways, I agree with Mr. Richard, it's too soon, it's a complicated issue. This town is it should be a simple town, okay, but the thing is, if the three selectmen elect them, it's gonna be like everything else that they do, it's gonna be three selectmen, not the whole town, okay? And the other thing is, we don't have any money to do, like I said, we're already broke before we get out of bed, so.
I'd like to make a comment on that, too.
And I think it's too soon. There has to be more discussion before people vote on this. And you said, Peter, you said that all along about, on the planning board, the last vote and whatnot, you said it was too soon. So that's what I'm saying to you.
I'll let you make a comment. Please be brief, and then the other two candidates will be able to make a second comment. If
The article I put on was to give us, if I should get elected as selectman, to draft a job description and do it under a special act, so the administrator does have authority. And so far as paying for the position, right now, you have to look at what we're paying for legal fees right now for our town. I believe we're gonna be able to reduce our legal fees, doing away with maybe the planner position, maybe even reducing our secretarial position. I think we can come up with the money, and no, they're not cheap. They work from 75 to 100,000. But I do believe in grants and funding that's out there. I think we can offset some of the costs. And I think what we need to do is put a plan on the table to change our direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krawczyk. Would either of the other candidates like to make another brief statement, 30 seconds on the subject?
Well, I think the way we can change the direction is to have somebody like me sitting here to change the direction. We don't need a town planner that, okay, that's it.
All right, thank you very much. The next question, we're going to have a slightly different format. I'm going to ask you what the current tax rate is in town, how much money per thousand, and I would like, if you know it, please raise your hand. This is a question for the 3 candidates for selectmen. If you know the tax rate, please raise your hand, and I'll go down the line, and then I'll tell you what it is after you've all answered. So just real quick, Mr.
I believe it's
Wolanin.
1875.
Okay.
1984.
Yeah, he's got it.
It is in fact 1984 per thousand, $19.84 per thousand. So to move on to the other half of the question, I'm going to start actually on the other end with Mr. Corriveau. And so after having told us the current tax rate, would you please discuss the tax rate's impact on our residents and what actions you would recommend to control and lower our taxes, your taxes?
Okay, we have just under 20K, 19.84 resident commercial tax rate with low property values, which simply means in 95% of our cases, property owners can't even sell our properties for what we are having assessed at. We need to go to the town meeting and vote no. We don't have, we need to unite as one, whole town, so all you people out there need to get involved with solutions. If you don't vote, then you get what you get. If you elect me for selectmen and planning board, I will at the very least put this town in the right direction. This has been my mission for a while, and it would take all night to explain some little things we can all do to help this problem. You all need, at this point, you all need to go to the special annual meeting to vote. You need to vote knowing that the town is suffering and broke, not like you're an ATM machine.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Richard, would you discuss the tax rate's impact on our residents and what you would recommend, what actions you would recommend to control and lower taxes?
Well, it's pretty obvious that the impact on the residents is devastating. You have the elderly that worked and raised a family and grew up in this town their whole life that have to sell their home after being paid off for all these years because they can't simply afford the taxes. When I work, I have people that come in and they pay $5,000 a year in house taxes. That's absurd. And until you get people to stop overspending their budget and get in line and act as one unit instead of 7 little departments worried about themselves, I don't think you're gonna have a change. Just for a note, the last 2 years, in 2007 and 2008, when I had the privilege of serving as a member of the board, tax rate in 2007 was $12.57, and in 2008 was $12.72. We paid our bills, and the town functioned just fine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
Well, make a correction, back then, the taxpayers group came along, and a lot of the, lowering the tax rate, we were taking money out of stabilization to knock down the tax rate, and we did do that. And that's a fact, it's in the town reports, and it wasn't all whatever your administration was doing back then. I do feel it's impacting everybody in town, and again, how to lower the rates, I mean, when I talked about trash pickup, right there, you can save a few $100 a year, you're dealing, to have curbside pickup, right there is gonna help you toward your tax rate. The budgets in our town, I don't believe they're overspent. I sat at the budget meetings when they went over the numbers, I don't feel they're way overspent. I back up exactly what you're saying as a question, that they're overspent. What budgets in this town are overspent? I didn't hear one.
Mr. Krawczyk here.
That's it.
Would any of the other two
Moderator,
candidates
can I
like to
ask a
have
question,
30
sir?
seconds to respond to that statement?
Are we supposed to be following a format here, or is this turning into a debate?
We
or-
do have a format, and I have previously been asking candidates for brief responses. If you would all like me to stop asking for brief responses, I'd be happy to, but otherwise I'm happy
Oh,
to give
no,
each
no, I don't have a
candidate
problem,
a
but-
single 30-second chance to respond to another candidate's statement.
But, you know, I did homework and prepared for a certain thing, and it seems to be going in a different direction. If you wanna
I don't
get
have
into it.
control over what the other candidates say in this.
Well, just respond. You said that budgets were overspent. Tell the voters out there what budgets were overspent
Thank
in
you,
our
Mr.
town.
Krawczyk.
Everybody in this town, if you look at the special town meetings, it used to be just a housekeeping where you would end up transferring a few dollars here and there, and it just seems to be, anytime somebody wants something, Peter, they come in, They pack the meeting in a special town meeting, and we get whatever we want. Tax rates are tax rates. You cannot debate the fact that in 2007, the tax rate was 1257, in 2008, the tax rate was 1272. In regards to the Taxpayers Association, one of the things that I noticed over the last years that it started out very strong and then faltered, and most of the positions that you yourself personally took, you did a complete 180 after a couple of years on that Taxpayers Association.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. I'm going to have to ask us to move on unless Mr. Corriveau would like a 30-second.
It's a very complicated issue, okay? And you're limited on what you can actually do. It's very complicated. It'll take me hours to explain it all, so I'm gonna just...
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next question. This next question is for the three candidates for selectmen. I'm going to start on this end with Mr. Krawczyk. What is your opinion of the new K-9 officer that has been added to the roster of the police department?
The selectmen added this position. Our chief felt it was important, and I support what the chief wants to do on this. If we have a problem with it in the future, then we deal with it as selectmen. But we have to support our police chief on this idea.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richard, what's your opinion on the new K-9 officer added to the police department?
I'm not in favor of it, sir. And I'll tell you the reason why. I think that the fact is, one, there are concerns that have to be addressed, I think, in that department before a K-9 officer. And there is a video out on the internet where a state trooper came into another small town similar to Warren's and gave a presentation regarding starting up a K-9 program. And my only concern with that is that the monies that is being spent has been told to all the taxpayers that that's gonna cover all the cost. And if you watch this video, make a long story short, in his presentation, it cost that department $46,000, not the $25,000 we have coming from the grant. Besides the fact that I don't think anything was mentioned, the fact that besides the training, which has seemed to hit a bump in the road since we've had this, that there is also 2 weeks a month that officer and the dog has to go for retraining. There is a 6-week training course at the end of that. Well, I just don't think that it's been transparent enough, and I'm afraid that we're gonna get stuck in the fact that $25,000 is said, but I think it's gonna cost us much more than that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau.
Well, I agree with Peter that the chief should, be in charge of what tools he needs for his department. And with that being said, the townspeople should have the ultimate choice and control in everything. My main concern is that there's gonna be liability issues, the dog bites somebody or something, et cetera, et cetera. In which case, the selectmen should be able to say, okay, let's donate this dog to another town, we don't need it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. This next question is going to be for all candidates. I'm actually going to start over with Mr. Veliz at the other end, if you don't mind. This question is regarding regionalization. The present Board of Selectmen has been working with surrounding communities to regionalize services. Should we be working to regionalize more services within the town? And if so, what services would you recommend for regionalization?
I think we have to take examples of another towns, and I don't know exactly what should we have or what should not have. I think it's a matter of planning before I can respond on something that straight, and I said a straight question. So it's more like, I would like to know more about it before saying something, what do I need for it? Without having the numbers on my table, I can't say it.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Corriveau, regionalization, what would you regionalize, or are you in favor of more regionalization, and if so, what?
Well, I believe that the situation now is flexible enough, and I want people to understand that the planning board makes recommendations, and it's up to the voters to ultimately decide by a 2/3 vote. And it's up to the resident, so I mean, and we're comparable to other towns. It's up to the residents to suggest if they want to change that issue.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Richard?
Well, I'm obviously in favor of regionalization regarding some things. We've talked about a dog pound. It doesn't make sense for 5 small towns around here to build 5 small dog pounds. You regionalize and you have something where every town contributes, which keeps costs down but solves the problem. Back to the canine, I would be in favor of where has the population and the services and needs much more than Warren does for a canine service. If I remember correctly, when it was being discussed in the paper, there was like 8 incidences in the last 10 years that Warren had to have a canine dog. I would be more in favor of giving Ware a stipend of, say, $100 a month to have them support and use it as needed. And along with, there are certain inspectors and departments that are common to all towns. I think instead of every little town having their own little one, you end up having one person that sits there and services at, I would imagine, a lower cost rate and more efficiently than.
All right, thank you very
The
much,
current
Mr.
system.
Richard. Mr. Krawczyk?
I truly believe in regionalization. I've been serving on the Regional Planning Commission, on the Fiscal Development Committee, and a lot of our grants that we give out for studies is to do a regionalization. And Warren's expanded into the Highway Department sharing, recently into the dog pounds, and I think our fire department, with our ambulance service possibly could be looked at. I think other avenues, purchasing, we could look into something like that. I do believe there's room to expand regionalizing. And attending meetings with other towns, listening to their problems, is where you come up with the ideas on how to combine your efforts. And just sitting here and coming to a meeting once a week doesn't do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krawczyk. This question is for the candidates for selectmen. We're going to start on this end with Mr. Krawczyk. It's about stabilization. The town once had multiple stabilization accounts to be able to fund purchases as they arose. What is your opinion regarding stabilization accounts? Should we save, or should we use our account to pay for items and to lower the tax rate? Mr. Krawczyk?
Well, in the past, I firmly believe if we had too much in there, it was worth putting some back. Most of the time, we have leftover budgets, that it ends up going to stabilization. But currently, we have trucks on our highway department that are 30 years old that are falling apart. That's where you have to start thinking about budgeting over 5 years and taking money out of something like a stabilization fund to pay for these projects. Our ambulance comes out of stabilization, and projects that have a lifespan of 5 years come out of that. And it does have an important factor in Warren. And recently, we've had a hard time in capital planning to have people stay on that committee to support those projects. And so it's a vital tool in Warren. And I don't feel we should go overboard putting money in that. I think when we were up to around 1.5, I think we were overdoing it. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Krawczyk. Mr. Richard, same question. Stabilization, what's your opinion regarding stabilization accounts? Should we save, or should we use our account to pay for items and lower the tax rate?
Well, I think it's contradictory. You're saying to save it and spend it. I think even in our own personal lives, it's always nice to put money away for a rainy day. It's always been a lifesaver. It's bailed us out of numerous situations we got in the past. And like Peter says, I think you should end up having a cap on it, because as funny as it may sound, sometimes you can have too much money sitting there. Taxpayers paid. That's how that money got into that account, and I think you should end up having the advantage of having those taxpayers, when they get into a jam, or instead of raising and appropriating $200,000 for something that they deem that they want, and they want it now, that's how you pay for it. You save money for a rainy day. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau.
Well, I agree with both of my opponents, and my knowledge on this is actually limited, I'll be honest with you, but I would like the recommendation from the Finance Committee and, discuss it further. But, I mean, I'd like to have all the accounts stuffed with money, and that's, people say, okay, as long as it gets voted on, we have to spend it, but I don't believe that. I believe that it should be saved, so I got a lot of issues with the way things are, and I think we should save money in all the accounts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. This next question is for the Select Board candidates. I'm going to start over with Mr. Corriveau again. The question is, how often should the town's general and personnel bylaws be reviewed and revised? How often should they be reviewed and revised? Mr. Corriveau.
Well, I'm gonna say, I don't know, I'm gonna say like every 10 years. I don't know if they ever have been, for one thing, and, I think, here again, that's up for the people to decide. But I believe in transparency and accountability, and I think that we should, there's no problem with reviewing stuff, it doesn't hurt anything.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. Mr. Richard, how often should the town's general and personnel bylaws be reviewed and revised?
Well, if they were done right in the first place, I think, you can review them once a year. I don't think you're gonna sit there and do town's bylaws over every year or every time there's a change on the Board of Selectmen or something. If you do it right and you make it fair to everybody, when there's a problem that comes up that concerns something in the personal bylaws that people deem that should be changed, then you do that at the annual town meeting. But to sit here and do bylaws over every year is, you do it once, you do it right, and you live with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
I feel it should be done every 3 years, probably annually, just to review, to see what job descriptions changed. And it's the only way you're gonna know how to keep up with whether they're getting paid fairly for what they're doing. Town employees.
All right, thank you very much. This next question is for the Select Board candidates. I'll start over here with Mr. Krawczyk. How often should the town be replacing town vehicles? Keep in mind, town vehicles could be police cars and fire trucks, or they could be the single vehicles, or the vehicles, owned by the Cemetery Commission, owned by the Highway Department, or assigned to the Highway Department. How often should the town be replacing town vehicles?
Well, I think once a year, I think it should be reviewed with the Finance Committee to go over how many miles are on these vehicles and the condition. There should be a written report from whatever department that owns these vehicles, and a status on what the condition of the vehicles are, and whether they're passing inspection or not. And I said, I heard the other night during we went over the town budget, we have vehicles, the highway department, that are 30 years old. How many times can you patch them? You gotta eventually say, these things really should be on a cycle, like a lot of towns are, to be replenished. That's definitely the direction I would be going.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Richard, how often should the town be replacing town vehicles?
Should replace town vehicles when they're needed, but that doesn't mean that we buy a vehicle, we don't maintain them, and then we buy another one 4 years down the road. I don't think anybody in this room sits here and wants to buy a new car every year. You have a maintenance budget. When things are wrong, you fix it. You don't sit there and say, well, I didn't have money in the budget. That's an excuse. You come up and say, hey, I got an issue that needs to be addressed. It's either a safety issue or something that vehicle could no longer perform for what it was purchased to. But I know sometime in the past that part of the job of the capital planning was getting on some sort of a system, getting a list of all the vehicles and sitting there and making capital planning. You plan for the future. You don't sit there and then just throw it on the voters at the town meeting that I need 2 vehicles this year, and we need 1 fire truck, an ambulance, and 2 cruisers. Every year should be sitting there and having somebody sit there and say, okay, in 5 years, we're gonna have the money set aside for this, and for this. I know we did it in the past with the ambulances, and why that practice stopped, I don't know.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corriveau.
I agree with what both my opponents said. As long as the vehicle is safe and usable, you hang on to it. Everybody knows you buy a vehicle or any piece of equipment and it starts to lose value, so it's common sense. As long as the town continues to be broke, probably the vehicles would be the least of your worries.
All right, thank you very much. This question is for all candidates. I'm going to start at this end again with Mr. Krawczyk, and then we'll go back to the other end, I promise. The town planner position was recently moved to a per diem basis, and I'm wondering, what is your opinion regarding the future of the town planner position?
Served on the planning board for 8 years, I feel that the planner position had a good role in redoing our zoning bylaws and a few issues we had with some of the buildings in town. And right now, currently, we're at a stage where the planner position should be for projects that are one-offs. With a part-time board coming in every other week, we don't have enough work to generate for the planner to keep them busy. And it was the best avenue to go to save the taxpayers money, and the projects come along, then we'll look into them from there with the planner.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richard.
Well, as Peter said, I think one of the main reasons for hiring a planner was in the town book that we ended up having, the town plan, the master plan, and that was done with the intention of it helps us and looks better when other people look at the town that Warren has taken the time and the money to get a master plan into it. The planner, I think, was hired out of that discussion. And Bill is personable, he's highly educated, and he does a fine job. But in the last 7 years, we spent $231,000 paying a town planner. I think that money can be spent much better ways than the way it is now.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Corriveau.
I don't like to single out anybody. I will tell you that he's far down on my list of people who need to go. He's been paying attention lately. A couple years ago, we rattled his cage a little bit and said, you got to earn your keep. So he's currently working on the Spring Street Culvert Mass Works grant to procure money for the town, along with other services that he provides.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Veliz.
Sometimes I think it's a good thing to have somebody who masters the science of that. Sometimes it's good to have a consultation on that. I don't have the numbers like you guys do. I just know that sometimes we need it, sometimes it's not needed. So it's more a matter of planning and really looking at ourselves, what is done or what we need or what we want him to do.
All right, thank you very much. This next question is for the candidates for selectmen. On my list, it is the last question for candidates for selectmen, though I will remind you that at the end we will have public questions. This question, I'm going to start at the end with Mr. Corriveau there, is about the landfill. What would you like to see done with the landfill? Would you like to leave it as it is in the status of a transfer station, or should it be moved back to being run by the town?
Okay, well, I would like to see it run by the town, and the town make some money off the deal. With that being said, I'd like to have I'd like to have curbside pickup like Peter suggested, so, but, I mean, right now it's a transfer station because there's no more room to bury the stuff, so, but I'd like to see the town make money off of that stuff.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Richard.
Repeat that again, sir?
What would you like to see done with the town landfill? Would you like to leave it as it is in the status of a transfer station, or should it be moved back to being run by the town?
Well, one, I think it's a little late that once we capped it, I think that door closed because I think the state is very, very leery about giving out new permits. So I think that we've lost that thing. But my concern when this was done, that the Board of Health, at the one time when we had discussed this a few years ago about changing it into the present situation, we're supposed to come up with 3 different scenarios to give the option to the taxpayers to be voted on town meeting. That never came to happen. It's run the way it is, but I just don't think that it makes much sense to spend the kind of money that we spend to have 600+ people and have the other 2/3 of the town. We are spending, everybody needs to get rid of trash. But I think both my opponents agree that the money should stay in town, and I think there is a better way and a more efficient way. What about townwide pickup? I have an old survey that I don't think anybody's ever seen.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
I attended the meetings at the Board of Health when they did a study to see what avenue was best to run for our transfer station or the landfill at the time, or curbside pickup. The study concluded that we paid almost $20,000 for, that curbside pickup was the best avenue to go. Well, the board at the time, that some of it's current there now, voted to keep it the way it is and go with the transfer station. We pay every year for curbside pickup, the residents that don't use the landfill, transfer station, we pay for service to be picked up, and plus in our taxes, we're paying to offset the cost of the people that are using the transfer station, aren't paying the full cost. It just isn't right. It's one of those services, it's nice when it's there, but I think there's other ways to go around it. And I think talking to some of the consultants that do trash pickup in the towns in the city, I think we should be looking at them and see how they're doing it to lower costs.
All right, thank you very much. Those are our candidates, those are our questions for the candidates for selectmen. Now I have 3 questions for the 2 candidates for zoning board, who again are Mr. Corriveau and Mr. Veliz. This question is going to start with Mr. Corriveau, and it is a simple: why do you want to become a member of the planning board?
I have a very analytical mind. I can take problems to the nth degree, and it's basically what I did all my life as a general contractor, and I want to serve the town. I want the planning board to, the planning board has to utilize Mr. Scanlon the way they want to utilize our time. So don't blame it on one person. What was the second part of that question? Why?
Just why do you want to become a member of the planning board?
I think I have a lot that I can offer, and I want to serve my town, but I want pertinent issues. I don't want us to be spending a lot of time on, and money on stuff that doesn't help us.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Veliz.
Well, I'm a father, I have a family, I want the best for my kids. There's a lot that I know, all my knowledge, that I can help the community and help this town to be a better town. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I have 2 questions here. One is sort of a quicker question, and the other one is more of a thinking question. So I will just give you the first one, and if you wouldn't mind just answering this one quickly, and then we'll take a little longer. I'll give you 90 seconds on the second question if you'd like it. This question, and I'm going to ask Mr. Veliz first, is just a simple, how many planning board meetings have you previously attended? And another sort of branch off of that is what relevant experience do you have to the planning board?
Well, in town, I've been here, I think 3 or 4 meetings, maybe less than that, 3. But my experience is on the other side of the planning board. For many years, I've been doing projects in all over Massachusetts and all the states, applying for different kind of permits for the planning board. So I've been used to be on the other side of the planning board.
Thanks very much. And Mr. Corriveau, how many meetings and what other experience or relevant experience do you have for the planning board?
I've attended, I don't know, I'm gonna say probably 20 or 30, but I always, when I come in this building, the first place that I go into is the building department, and I speak with Bill almost every Wednesday, and I'm always kept abreast, and I have been basically for 30 years since I moved into this town on these issues.
All right, thank you very much. So this question I'll give you, this is the last question I have on my list, and then we'll be taking audience questions. I'll give you just a little bit longer to answer that one since the last one was quick. And it's, what is your opinion, oh, Mr. Corriveau, you're going to be going first. What is your opinion of the current zoning status in the town? Do you think there should be any changes made? And if you do, what changes do you think should be made within the town's zoning?
Okay, this is from these people? You said these questions are coming from the audience?
This is my last question pre-written that we selected for, and then we'll be taking audience questions next.
Okay, well, at this point, I believe that it's flexible enough, and it's comparable to other towns. The planning board recommends, but it's up to the voters to decide on the zoning, and you need a 2/3 vote. So, I mean, it's up to the residents to make suggestions, and I'm here to serve, not to rule. It's up to the town to decide what they want.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wolanin.
Well, here we go again about what, communication is. I've never been really exposed to the zoning plan. I'm an architect, I'm a planner. I have a lot that I would like to contribute, so before, answering a straight question for something I haven't seen or looked at or studied before, but in general, that would be my position, that, we should take a look at it, study, or somebody will explain me what's going on and what is it. I think the main idea at the end of the day is what we want for Warren. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes my pre-written questions. So we are going to take questions from the audience now. We're going to take the next 15 minutes to do it. So I'd ask anyone who has a question to please line up here, starting next to my desk. The rules of this will be that respectfully I'd ask the audience members to take 30 seconds or less to ask their questions. Please specify if your question is for the candidates for select board, the candidates for planning board, or for all candidates. And the candidates will have the same rules as previous. They will have 60 seconds to answer, and I'll try to give you a little wrap-up symbol at about 45 seconds. Thanks very much. Would you mind starting with your name?
My name is Stanley Soltis. My question is to Marc Richards. You had 2 terms as a selectman.
Respectfully, I'd just like to ask, instead of individual candidates, if you ask them for a group. So for all candidates for select.
Well, my question pertains to somebody that has 2 previous terms served. And what I'm relating to, I would like him to express what his best accomplishment was and what his biggest mistake was in his 8 years.
Why don't we bring that to a bit of a more general question instead of
I'll
just
answer the
Mr.
question,
Richards?
sir.
Well, why don't we have everybody apply that, if everybody hasn't been on the select board, but apply that to their work within the town. What is your greatest accomplishments and what might you regret within the town? I'll go ahead and start with Mr. Richard.
Probably the biggest accomplishment after 30-some-odd years of countless numbers of boards of selectmen that we managed to build a town barn on time, on budget.
All right.
Some of the, it's not easy to sit here, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and label it as mistakes. Were there some rough bumps in the road? Certainly every board has it in the past, every board is going to have it in the future. There are certain, legal situations you get into that you, unfortunately, that's part of the job.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Richard. How about Mr. Krawczyk? Would you like to take a crack at this question?
Yeah, comment what Mark just said. The highway barn, the truth is, when they were gonna build the highway barn, it was a public meeting. I got a copy of the plans. I sent them to an engineer firm in Westfield, Forest Engineer. I sent him all the plans. So when the bidding came in, he had maybe the upper hand because he had the plans in advance, but he gave us a better bid, I believe, on the building because he had the plans firsthand. And he wasn't aware when we were having this built. But I knew the guy had built several buildings in Western Mass, and the people were all happy with it. So I figured we need a crack at somebody that was familiar with the buildings we were looking for. But the highway barn, I think it wasn't really done on budget because it was built on a site next to a town's water supply. It cost way more than it should have. The salt shed, the state offered years before to give us free salt sheds. We passed it up, instead we paid for one. It didn't make sense. We should have took the free salt shed, put it on a piece of property, when we bought a piece of land and moved it to it. But instead we paid out of our pocket for it. So no, I don't think that was a good accomplishment at all.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Crawczyk.
Mary, but.
I'm gonna let Mr. Corriveau go first if you don't mind, and then you can have a 30-second rebuttal if you don't mind. Mr. Corriveau.
Okay, my contribution, if you rewind the tape about an hour, when I read that 3 pages, I more than sufficiently answered that question.
All right, thanks very much. Mr. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I take exception with what's been said. One, it was brought in on budget and on time. And the biggest area that we had, we went to the first time we put it on the budget for a vote. We bought 11 acres of land for under $10,000 an acre with 1,200 foot of frontage on a level lot, which we didn't have to spend very much money on site work. The first time we went to that vote, for the same exact building that we have on site today, was $1.1 million. But because there was a personality conflict from my opponent here, no matter where that building was going, no matter what it cost, it was not gonna be passed because of the personality issue. We had to put off that vote from October to the next spring meeting, and in that time, the economy went cuckoo, steel went up, and the price of that building went up $500,000. And the only reason it went up $500,000 is because of people that sat there and did not pass it the first time.
Thank you
That's
very
why
much,
it cost
Mr.
so much
Richard.
money.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Certainly, come on up. If you could say your name and specify which office the question is to or all.
It's the right question, I guess, to the selectmen.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Deborah Hardy, I'm a resident of Warren, and everyone has talked about bringing in business into Warren. One question I have is that the main streets of Warren are pretty unsightly. And personally, sometimes myself, when I bring people in through the town, I have them go possibly another direction. And I'm just wondering what the thought is about making the town itself a more appealing place so that people will want to do business or even use the common or use the town. I grew up in a town and they always had like for dumping, or if you had waste, you could bring it in. And we don't seem to have those kind of services here for the people to get rid of their waste, so.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to start with Mr. Corriveau on that end.
Well, were you here when the orange things were in front of the town hall for a year and a half? Okay, so I don't know how long you've been in town, but that, you know, I had to laugh at that for a long time, but that's, we need money we need the tax rate to go down. We need people to have enough money to fix up their properties, and we need not to tax them every time they fix up their properties. When you pull a building permit, it goes from the building department into the tax office. That's baloney, okay? We need to help people to fix up their properties and get back to, you know, good old-fashioned common sense. And people will not fix up their properties in this town because they're gonna get taxed more on them. That's pretty pathetic.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Richard.
I'm trying to understand what the, you know, we go back to the same thing of, attracting business to town. Now, the last year we did, some years ago, we did all the sidewalks in the front of the buildings on downtown. Unfortunately, as a member of the Board of Selectmen or anybody, you cannot tell a private owner what to do with their building. That building that is owned by the gentleman from Springfield has been a mess. It's been a mess for years. The board has been in the past of trying to get him to do something with it. The front of the buildings and the sidewalks are all done. Right now, they're in the middle of doing the pipe work in the street, and I am assuming that is gonna be resurfaced now that, like Mr. Corriveau says, those god-awful orange cones that were downtown for a year and a half are finally gone. And I think, the town, as rough and tumble as it is, has made a great many improvements, but the only way you're gonna get businesses in town is to lower the tax rate. And first of all, you have to have a business that Warren can support.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. Mr. Krawczyk.
Rural development has approximately 40 different programs that are available to help funding for different projects in small towns like Warren. And there is funding available to fix up some of these buildings. And I think we need a line of communication with the owners, and they are private owners, and you can't really make them do, if they don't want to fix it up. But I think showing them an apple on the end of a string saying, we got money, and a good portion of your repairs can be done by an offset and a grant that's available. We need to set that kind of a communication up and say, there is money available. And I don't think that exists right now with the people. A lot of the owners I believe, don't even live in Warren that own these buildings. A lot of them are from out of town.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Anyone? This is your last chance. Otherwise, I'm going to let us, since we have a little time left, I'd like all candidates to make a closing statement, if you don't mind, 1 minute. There will not be any second closing statement, no rebuttals effectively, so if you wouldn't mind tailoring accordingly. Mr. Krawczyk, I think I'm going to have you go first, if you don't mind, and take it away.
All the years I've been serving on the planning board, and before with the Taxpayers Association, my only goal was to try to lower our tax rate. And I do believe there's an avenue out there to try to control what's going on in our town. I think it's beyond a revolving select board that happens every year where we have a different person that comes in. I think we need to stabilize our administration, to have someone there that it's actually a suit that's familiar with the grants that are out there and the funding, and a communication with our personnel issues, with other boards in town. I think we need one central person that can do that. And that's why I feel the town administrator position, I feel is crucial to Warren to try to look into it, because currently what's been going on doesn't work. And I suppose that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Richard.
The only thing I can say is I think one of the things I have in my favor is I had this position for 6 years. I got the experience, I got the know-how, I have met a vast number of contacts, including Ann Gobi from your office, and I don't think it's a time for a learning curve. I don't think it's a time for a major change. I think what we got to do is straighten out the situation we're in right now. And I think I'm the best man to do it.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Corriveau.
With all due respect to Mr. Richards, I believe he's had his chance, and like I said, I've been in this town for 30 years. I've seen, 4 different building inspectors, probably 6 different selectmen. One that's been on for like way too long. And, but I mean, I wouldn't brag about that. And so I want the opportunity to take a crack at it. But here's the thing, people have to go and they have to vote on these articles, okay? And that's number one. Unfortunately, the system is broken, and I'd like the system to work so that we could just pay our taxes and go about our lives and not worry about it. That's how I want it to function. But unfortunately, right now, it's important, you have to go vote, and you have to get involved, and if you don't, then you get what you get.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Corriveau. And Mr. Veliz.
Well, I guess we're here, we are here to help, to do something for our town, to do something for our families. My only reason to be sitting here tonight is because I just want to give back something to the town where I live in, where I feel proud, and where we can make a better place to live.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Veliz. That would appear to conclude our candidates forum. Thank you to all the candidates for coming out.